Veterans came to Parliament Hill today to tell the government that they are tired of being left out in the cold.
When you have a prime minister that's able to look a Canadian hero in the eye who's lost his leg and say, I'm sorry, but you're asking for more than we're willing to give, then people, we've got some problems here. And for Justin Trudeau, I would ask, how much is a leg worth? How much is all that personal sacrifice, all those years being away from your family, and everything people have had to lose? How much is that worth?
The crowd that gathered on the West Lawn says wait times for services and claims are longer than ever, and veterans are being denied services essential to their health and wellness. The veterans' concerns were also brought to the floor of the House of Commons, where the opposition called on the Prime Minister to apologize for what they say were insensitive comments to veterans and to fulfill his campaign commitments.
Our veterans have given so much, Mr. Speaker, and the Prime Minister always seems to have something for everyone else. Why won't the Prime Minister hear our veterans' legitimate concerns?
Once again, veterans are calling on this government to listen to them. Our veterans put their lives on the line for this country, and the least we can do is to recognize their dedication, is to support them when they come back home. Yet successive governments, Conservative and Liberal, have been fighting veterans in court, and they are saying that they are asking for too much that we can give. What happened to the Prime Minister who promised to do right by our veterans and give them the support they deserve? Mr. Speaker, how can this Prime Minister and this government have this broken promise for our vets?
I think we have been very clear in the election campaign, but more importantly, since we formed government over 2.5 years ago, that we respect the sacred obligation that Canada has towards our veterans. Not only did we commit, Mr. Speaker, for a pension for life, something that my colleague, the Minister of Veterans Affairs, has delivered for the brave men and women who've served in our Canadian Armed Forces. Mr. Speaker, we committed to reopening offices closed by the previous government. We committed to increasing support for mental health services, and we will never stop doing more to support the brave men and women who served our armed forces.
Now let's get the government's reaction. Veterans Affairs Minister Seamus O'Regan joins us from St. John's, Newfoundland. Welcome to the show, Minister. Nice to have you with us. This afternoon, with freezing rain, slippery roads, nasty weather here in Ottawa, dozens of veterans were on the Hill demanding your government keep its promise to injured vets. They're angry, and you can't seem to fix it. So would that be a fair assessment?
Well, I would say that, you can't seem to fix it, but that won't stop us from trying, and we are trying extremely hard. It's not to say that veterans' issues aren't complex, they are, but, I'm not one to just say, well, then that's it, that's all you can do. Far from it. And so we introduced Pension for Life, which is a commitment we made, and it was part of my mandate letter, and we followed through on that just before Christmas. And I am still going across the country and explaining exactly what we're talking about, going around to legions and having town halls right across the country. I'm in New Brunswick next week, and I'll be heading out west after that. We've been out to Vancouver and to Esquimalt, and we've also been to Halifax, Dartmouth. And where I've gone and where I've talked about it, we've gotten, I would say, a respectful reception from veterans who, once you walk them through exactly what this means, seem to get it. Now, is it, and I said this right from the beginning when we announced it, will you please everybody? No, you will not. Yeah, but will we be going back to the Pension Act of 1919? No, we won't. And let me be very clear on that. I mean, and I've said it before. I will not go back to the Pension Act of 1919. I couldn't in good conscience go back to the Pension Act of 1919.
But that's not.
But having said that, I believe that what we've developed with Pension for Life is good. Yeah,
but that's really not what we're talking about, 1919. We're talking about here and now. And, there's still a lot of anger. We sense it, we hear it, we talk to them, and they're still, really angry with you. Conservatives brought it up again today in question period. You promised you would do better than them, and you clearly have not. So do you think, I know you are, you inherited this portfolio. Do you think your government overpromised?
Well, let me go back and say that I differ with you strongly on 2 points. Firstly, we are talking about the Pension Act of 1919. That is what the plaintiffs are discussing and are making an appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada about. So we are most definitely talking about the Pension Act of 1919. from their point of view, no question about it. Secondly, we clearly have done better than the Conservatives have. In 2 years, we've invested more than $10 billion. We have reopened offices that they closed, and we have reinstated budgets and hired more frontline staff. So I would contest anybody who would say that we clearly are not doing better than the Conservatives.
Okay,
Also, it's
well
really
then-
important to remember that all political parties signed on in 2006 to the new Veterans Charter, which was meant to change and adapt. Now, they sat on it for 10 years. We are reinvesting in it, and we're ensuring that our veterans get a pension for life, a monthly pension for life.
Yeah, lower than the one the Conservatives had. But let me, you want to challenge someone? Let's challenge the Canadian Forces watchdog. He was on the Hill this week saying, we studied the problem of veterans transition services. Those are the offices you say you've reopened. But he says, you know, it's time to act. You've reopened them. The people that are there are not experts. It's just civil servants. It takes a long time. Listen, they're the ones that are still complaining. Is it time to act and to stop studying then? You studied it a lot. Do you know what the problem is?
In fact, I will say I won't challenge the ombudsman. I completely agree with him. It has been studied and studied and studied. And if the committee wants to go forward with another study, you know, that is certainly their prerogative. And if anything new comes from it, you know, I'll certainly glean what I can from it. It will certainly counsel and advise my decisions. But I'm acting. We're acting. I have been given a mandate from the Prime Minister. In fact, when he sat me down and then told me that I would be the new Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense, he said, we need to do something about what we call convergence, which basically means we need to make sure that the system works from the point of view of the veteran, that they know what will happen to them once they leave the Canadian Armed Forces, and that they are prepared for that. And it shouldn't be moving from one bureaucracy to another and one set of doctors or medical staff to another, paperwork another. No, it should be seamless and from their point of view. And in fact, this is something that came up to me from my brother, who is a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and who does a lot, because he's the vice commandant of the Naval Fleet School in the Esquimalt, has to do with a lot of human resources issues. So months before the Prime Minister had even named me as Minister of Veterans Affairs, my brother said, you as a government have got to do something about this. And in fact, the Prime Minister identified it, and therefore I am acting. We had to do pension for life first because we had promised the Canadian people in the budget that we would have that done for Christmas. But now I have to tell you, you know, I am preoccupied utterly by getting convergence done. I am not waiting for a study. I couldn't agree more with the Ombudsman.
Thank you so much, Seamus O'Regan. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Joyce.
So let's get a reality check with someone who is living through Canada's veteran system. Joining me now is Sean Brouillet, a Canadian Forces veteran. Hello, thanks for being here. You heard the minister. He says they're doing more than the Conservatives. You've been doing this for a couple of decades. Yeah. Are they doing more than the Conservatives? Are you better off now than you were a few years ago?
I mean, I first began speaking out about these veterans benefits 20 years ago, and this is just such a bizarre, strange deja vu. I mean, each time that a veteran came and complained over the past 20 years, the government would march out and say, we're providing everything that we can for veterans, and we're investing money in veterans. And it's been a sad reality that, you know, back in 2006, when they introduced this lump sum program, that veterans after 2006 received less than those before 2006. And the other sad reality is that veterans under this new Liberal plan in 2019 will receive less after 2019 than they currently do. I mean, this pension for life is got to be, I mean, we got to commend this government for having a real smoke and mirrors campaign. All they've done is merely repackage existing programs, rename them, and then took away a few under the table so that veterans will be worse off. So this pension for life is nothing more than this lump sum converted to an annuity. So there is no pension for life, as the minister claims.
But, you know, they do say, listen, we are putting $10 billion more. We have reopened these transition offices that the Conservatives have closed. Like, we've done a lot more and a lot better. Are you asking for too much?
I mean, these are piecemeal Band-Aid measures. Opening a few offices that should never have been closed, I mean, that's the least that any government could do. As far as this $10 billion, I mean, this appears to be nothing more than funny money. All they've done is rolled over, in a lot of cases, money for existing programs, rename that program and say, hey, our new program has the same money as the old program.
So they're laughing at you?
I think what they're doing is something really quite cruel. I think that, you know, I mean, when they start using technical terms like convergence, I mean, it really diminishes what veterans are asking for. Veterans, when they serve in the military, you know, it's either life or death decisions. Truth is very important for them. So when they're deceived endlessly over decades about whether they're getting help, veterans know if they're not getting help. So for a minister to stand up and say, we're helping you, when the veteran very well knows that they're not receiving the help that they need, then it really is quite disrespectful. And it's the height of arrogance, really. And it's the greatest of diversions between government and veterans over the past few years.
So you were on the Hill today in horrible weather, really, and asking, you know, for, you know, a little bit of clarity, give us the pensions we've asked for and that you promised us, and also to ask the Prime Minister to apologize, because a while back he told a veteran, listen, we just can't afford to give you what you want. Do you want the Prime Minister to apologize to you? And if you do, what for?
Well, just a clarification. I was not one of the brave few that made it out to the Hill. I had some family commitments today, but I commend their hard work for being out there and bringing attention, because the only way we're going to bring about change is if the Canadian public is involved, because politicians seem to condescend towards veterans and ignore what they've been asking. So we really need public engagement. As far as the minister and the government saying that, you know, that they can't afford to pay for veterans right now, they're asking more for them, I think they need a bit of a history lesson. I mean, post-World War I, post-World War II, is that government was spending proportionally 10 times the amount that they're spending now on veterans. And we have similar numbers of veterans right now that we had of post-World War I, and just slightly lower than we had post-World War II. So government needs to sit back and say, you know what, if we can afford to send them to war, we can certainly afford to take care of them during peace. And that's what they did after both world wars. We can certainly do it now. So it's a bit of smoke and mirrors. It's definitely a political game they're playing. And unfortunately, for veterans, it's not a game. This is life and death for them and their families, and the government has to do more. We can't afford to do more. That's the truth, and government has to do that.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marie, for enlightening us. Thanks a lot.